They thought she wouldn't last a week. Too slight, too quiet, too easy to forget. But when her sleeve slid back and the ink burned black on her skin, Ironveil Range forgot how to breathe. The Nevada desert was merciless. Ironveil had been carved out of nothing but red rock and dust, a crucible meant to break Special Forces hopefuls before the real world ever could. The sun punished, the sand cut, and the instructors watched without a hint of pity. Sound off. Soldier, where are you watching from? Drop your city and country in the comments so we know how far this unit reaches. Then subscribe and stand with the battalion. Aria Kade looked like the one candidate destined to collapse first. Boots too loose, pack too heavy. Around her, recruits with chiseled frames and perfect stares whispered bets about her failure. Some said 3 days, others said 1. Darrow, loud as always, leaned close, smirking. You're slowing us down. Kade, what's under that sleeve? Training wheels. He yanked her arm before she could move. The cloth slipped back. The laughter died instantly. Black ink seared across her wrist. Volt 9. Trask went pale. Reese's smirk faltered. Even Sergeant Calder, who hadn't looked at her twice all week, stiffened. The sound came next. A low thrum that shook dust off the roofs. The Nightfang 7 descended, its rotors slicing the desert air like blades. Grit whipped into the recruits' faces as the black transport set down in the yard. The hatch slammed open. Out strode General Mercer, uniform crisp, chest lined with scars disguised as medals, eyes like iron. He didn't acknowledge Calder, or the others, or the dust storm around him. His gaze locked on Aria. The recruits froze. Darrow's grip slipped from her wrist. Aria calmly tugged her sleeve back down, her face unreadable. Mercer stopped before her. His voice carried like steel dragged across stone. Whoever bears this code answers only to Spectre command. He didn't explain. He didn't repeat himself. He turned on his heel and walked back to the Nightfang. The bird lifted, dust boiling in its wake. Vanishing over the ridgeline, the yard stood silent. The recruits blinked grit from their eyes, unsure if they'd just witnessed history or theater. Aria said nothing. She adjusted her sleeve and walked back to the barracks. Each step unhurried, each step heavier than the silence around her. Some muttered that Mercer's words were ceremony, politics. Others whispered that Volt 9 was a myth, a mark people faked to intimidate. By dinner, the laughter was creeping back thin, nervous, but alive, because Ironveil had its own law until you proved yourself under desert fire. You were nothing, and in their eyes, Aria Kade was still nothing, but the desert has a way of remembering ghosts, and it was only beginning to whisper her name. Ironveil thrived on humiliation. If the desert didn't break you, your squad would, in the mess hall. The ritual played out. Darrow slammed his tray beside Aria's. Metal cracking against steel. Prove you belong. Dead weight. Stand up. Recite the soldier's creed. Reese leaned in, smiling sharp. Yeah, let's hear it. Loud. Marlowe picked up the rhythm, banging his spoon like a drum. Trask folded his arms, waiting for the spectacle. Even Sergeant Calder, arms crossed in the doorway, didn't stop them. The chant grew louder. Read it, read it. Aria rose slowly. Her boots scraped the floor, her spine straight. She spoke the lines evenly, her voice calm. I will always place the mission first. I will never accept defeat. Before the third line left her mouth, the mess hall erupted. Darrow mimicked her tone in falsetto. Reese pretended to wipe tears of laughter. Marlowe pounded the table, chanting her words back at her. She finished anyway, sat down, picked up her fork as if nothing had happened. The laughter swelled, but her silence cut sharper than any comeback. That night, The desert tested them harder. The silent march drill stretched a half-mile across scrub and sand, each recruit carrying full kit. The rule, not a sound. One cough, one clatter, one snapped twig, and the instructor's flares would mark you for failure. Boots crunched too loudly. Trask cursed under his breath when his canteen rattled. Darrow stumbled over stone, nearly toppling. Red flares hissed skyward, one after another, until the night burned crimson with failure. Aria moved differently. Each step measured, each breath timed with the wind. She seemed less like she was learning and more like she was remembering, when Marlowe nearly stepped into a mock tripwire. She caught his arm, pulling him back without a word. She knelt, hands steady, and clipped the wire clean. No flare, no sound. From the shadows. Instructor Vale watched through night optics. He scribbled a single line, not training. Remembering. By dawn. Only 4 recruits had crossed without a flare. Aria stood among them. Dust streaked across her face. Eyes calm. The others muttered excuses. Reese hissed about luck. Darrow gritted his teeth, calling her a shadow. But for the first time, their jeers carried hesitation, because Ironveil was supposed to crush weakness. Yet Aria Kade had moved through the desert like she'd been here before, like ghosts had drawn her path, and inside the barracks, on walls older than the recruits themselves, a hidden mark was waiting to be found. The barracks at Ironveil were relics, Cold War bunkers left to cook under the desert sun. Concrete cracked, paint blistered. Dust sealed every window shut. But some marks survived longer than walls. Aria saw it first near her bunk. Scratched deep into plaster, a black triangle gouged with 3 diagonal slashes. To most, just vandalism. To her, it was unmistakable. The emblem of the Spectre Directive, a Black Ops unit struck from every official record. Whispered only in fragments. Her expression didn't change, but her gaze lingered a second too long. Ghosts had passed here before. The drills escalated. Navigation across dunes under false stars. Heat carries with jerrycans until arms failed. Every session. The squad probed her edges, waiting for her to crack during a night march. Trask led the squad with his GPS clutched high. Boasting they'd make time, Aria's voice barely carried. That frequency's not friendly. It's a trap, he laughed. A minute later, the radar alarm screamed. Mission aborted. Sergeant Calder's jaw flexed. He didn't thank her, didn't even look her way. But his silence said enough. The radio exercise went no better. Darrow snarled, tangled in wires. Marlowe smacked the receiver, cursing static. Reese looked away, unimpressed. Aria moved without permission, her hands sure, snapping the casing open and bridging a circuit. The hiss cut to clarity, coordinates spilling through. Instructor Vale studied her. Where'd you learn that Aria's eyes held his for half a beat? Picked it up, that night. Colonel Stroud sat in his office, fan rattling against desert heat. He unlocked a file stamped Spectre Directive, dark eyes only. His movements weren't shaky, but deliberate, like a man walking through a minefield he already knew was armed. The screen flickered. A younger Aria stared back. Same steady eyes, same silence. Header text burned across the page. Directive 09. Kill count 289 confirmed. Status presumed. KIA. Stroud exhaled once. Slow? Then why are you standing in my yard? The file explained nothing. It only sharpened the question. If Vault 9 had been buried years ago, then her presence here meant one thing: Spectre Command wanted her ghost to stay off the books. And Ironveil was just the stage. Back on the sand. The squad doubled down. Reese mocked her faded gear. Darrow muttered about tattoos faked in back alleys. But the insults cracked, hollow echoes of themselves. Every taunt carried hesitation, like they no longer trusted their own laughter. In a tactical briefing, a major outlined an urban assault simulation. Aria spoke from the back, her voice level. "Your east flank's open. You need a decoy." The major froze, checked the diagram, then nodded. "She's right." The room went dead quiet. No one laughed. Ironveil wasn't laughing anymore. And across the desert, the wind shifted. A low engine rumble carried over the ridges. Not the usual patrol trucks. Something larger, something coming for them. The range was preparing its hardest test yet, and the target was already chosen. By the 4th week. Bravado cracked. Ironveil's deadliest exam had arrived, the sniper trial. 7 steel silhouettes lined the range, programmed to sprint, cross, vanish behind barriers. Wind sheared across dunes, warping every shot. Sergeant Calder's voice was iron. 7 targets, 7 seconds, 1 chance, no retrees. Miss, and you're done. Recruits stiffened. The myth hung over them. A ghost, they said, once cleared it in 7. But no living candidate had ever dropped all 7. Not one. Darrow laughed too loud. "She'll choke." Reese smirked like the outcome was already certain. Aria stepped forward, not volunteering, not asking, just moving. The yard hushed. She lifted the rifle, cycled the bolt once, settled her cheek on the scope, breathing even, body folding into stillness. She looked less like a trainee than a soldier remembering muscle memory she'd buried. The buzzer split the desert. Targets launched. 1 darted left, another climbed high, 2 crossed, then split. A silhouette reappeared from behind steel cover. Staggered speed, almost impossible to time. Crack, 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 crack. 7 explosions echoed off canyon walls. Dust lifted, the range falling into silence. When the timer froze, all 7 targets bore clean strikes. 8 seconds. Not the legend, not the 7, but the first in Ironveil's history to finish clean. The silence wasn't awe, it was fear. Because myths didn't stand in front of you with dust on their boots. Myths didn't reload and step off the line like it was routine. Aria Kade had, from the far side of the range. General Mercer appeared. No rotor wash, no convoy. His presence didn't need an entrance. "Show me," he said. Aria rolled her sleeve back. Ink. Black and unflinching Volt 9. The recruits stiffened. Trask's smirk collapsed. Reese looked away. Darrow's fists tightened until his knuckles blanched. From the shade. Another figure approached, older, silver-haired, eyes carrying scars of a dozen campaigns. Instructor Harlan. He drew a dog tag from his pocket, metal dulled by years. "Stamped number 014. I knew one once," he said. Voice gravel dragged across stone. "Ashfall Canyon. Ghost marked like you pulled my men through fire when every map said we'd die there. Same mark. Same eyes." He set the tag on the bench, turned, walked away. No one spoke. Colonel Stroud closed his notebook without writing. Some truths weren't meant for ink. The wind carried a new sound, then deeper, steadier, engines rising over the ridges. Not another test, not another drill. Ironveil's chain of command was about to change, and every recruit knew it when the desert stopped breathing. The roar came first low, deliberate, the Night Fang 7 carved across the Nevada sky like a black blade, rotors whispering instead of screaming. Dust spiraled upward, coating every recruit in grit. The transport hit the ground hard. Hatch slammed. General Mercer strode out, a sealed directive in hand. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "By order of Spectre Command," Mercer said, eyes sweeping the yard. "Volt 9 is reinstated, effective immediately." The squad went still. Darrow swallowed hard. Trask shifted his stance. Reese kept her chin high, but her fingers twitched against her thigh. Sergeant Calder snapped a salute, less regulation, more recognition. Aria tugged her sleeve back down, concealing the mark again. Then she moved. The formation parted without command. She didn't march like she had won. She walked like she had always belonged, and the desert had simply admitted it at last. "Aria." The voice cracked the silence. Lieutenant Hale Bookish. Quiet stepped forward with a folded letter, edges worn soft. His hands shook, not with fear, but with weight. "My brother," he said. "Operation Ashfall Storm. The report said a ghost carried him out through burning sand. He never knew her name, only a Mark Volt 9. Aria paused, met his eyes. Her voice was steady, but it landed like an oath. Tell him he wasn't alone. None of them were. Hale's shoulders trembled, breath catching. For him, that was enough. The fallout came swift. Darrow's Ranger application disappeared without a trace. Trask's file flagged for conduct. Reese found a counseling slip in her bunk. True leadership is measured by how you treat the unseen. Calder's eyes had shifted respect where once was doubt. Colonel Stroud sealed the directive dossier and locked it deep. On the cabinet he scrawled 3 words, "Keep sealed." Some truths belong to ghosts. Instructor Vale passed a hand over the black triangle etched into the barracks wall. He didn't paint it over. Not yet. Some marks weren't graffiti, they were warnings. Aria reached the night fang. The crew chief stepped aside, saluting without words. Mercer followed her up the ramp, but before boarding, he turned. His gaze cut across the recruits, men and women who had mocked, doubted, dismissed. They didn't lower their heads. They simply stood quiet, the weight of recognition heavy on their shoulders. The hatch sealed. The night fang rose into the burning sky, leaving Ironveil buried in a storm of dust. On the ground, Hale clutched the letter tighter. Calder stepped beside him. "She'll come back?" Hale asked. Calder's voice was quiet. "Ghosts don't come back. They never left. They wait until you need them, inside the cabin." The headset crackled Volt 9 standby for tasking. Aria opened her eyes, fixed on the horizon. "Send it," she said. The night fang cut east, vanishing into the light, and Ironveil was left with silence, a scar of boot prints in the dust, and a truth that clung harder than heat. Strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it waits, hidden, until the desert calls again. The night fang fades, but this unit lives on. Drop your city and country below, report in, if you believe these ghosts deserve to be remembered. Subscribe and join the mission.